Friends and learners, welcome back to another video lecture on the topic meaning and types of assessment. From this week onwards, we are shifting our discussion to the use of technologies or ICT in the process of assessment. You are very much aware that assessment is an integral component of the teaching learning process. Whatever the teacher teaches, the teacher has to assess whether the learners or students are getting what the teacher is teaching or whether they are understanding what the teacher is teaching in the classroom. And assessment is there in all the modes of education, whether it is face-to-face education, open distance learning, online learning, or the blended mode of teaching learning process. So friends, in this video lecture, our focus will be on the use of ICTs in assessment. But we will start with the different types of assessment, and then we will also discuss some of the ICTs which can be used for assessing the progress of learning of students. To start with, I would just like to remind you about the technologies or ICTs. What is ICT? They are nothing but, in many of the video lectures we have already seen that they are the tools which are used to create, disseminate, store and manage digital information. So when technology or ICT is used for assessment of the progress of learning of learners, then we call it as the ICT or technology use in assessment. Now, if you talk about the major application of ICT, it can be said that this is used for teaching and learning. We have seen many ICTs or technologies which can be used for teaching and learning. And the next major application would be in assessment. Then we have the management of educational activities. ICT or technology is also used for managing various educational activities. It can be both managing the educational institution and the management of teaching learning processes. The other important application comes in the professional development. There are various open distance courses or online programs which the teachers can use for developing their professional skills. So friends, if you talk about the major application, these are the major places where ICTs are used in the educational process. Now talking about the ICT, we have already seen that ICTs includes both the digital devices and application softwares. So the digital devices like computer, tablet, television, radio, mobile phones, LCD projector, interactive boards or smart boards, all those digital devices are used for disseminating and storing digital information. Again, if you talk about the application softwares, it includes many technologies like SMS, emails, blog, website, and the technologies or application softwares which you are seeing on the slide. So friends, there are various technologies which can be used for various activities in the teaching learning process. Now, let us shift the discussion to the assessment part of teaching learning. Why it is important or why ICTs are important in assessment? One of the major reasons, I would say, this gives chances for individualized testing situations. In a traditional or face-to-face examination, which is we call the traditional mode of assessment, students will be sitting in the examination hall. They will be writing the answers, and this is the paper pen mode of assessment. But if you use ICT for assessment, we can make assessment questions which suits each individual. Let me make it very simple. Like if I am a student who is not very bright, then whenever I attend an examination using the ICT, depending upon the answer which I am giving, the questions can be twisted, the questions can be provided, which is not possible in the traditional examination. This is one of the reasons. The second, it provides immediate feedback, which is not possible in the traditional face-to-face kind of assessment. The third is it increases the frequencies of assessment. If you remember, see, in a traditional face-to-face classroom, we usually conduct a unit test or quarterly or half-yearly or term-end examination. So the assessment is limited to couple of such assessment practices. But if it is ICT based, it can be done at any point of time. It can be repeated many times. So that is also there. The frequency can be increased. Now the different technology tools, it's not only there is one Google form which is one of the tools used for assessment. There are many number of technology tools or application softwares which can be used for assessing the progress of learning of students. So friends, since there are different tools, then why can't we make use of ICT? The next point is cost effective and it can be prepared easily. So if we talk about the importance, these are some of the points which we can quote why ICT can be used in the assessment of learning of learners. Now again, a couple of more points. It can be done on time, on pace. The assessment can be attended at any time, but in the traditional examination, there will be a fixed timetable, fixed schedule for examination. Here also we have fixed schedule, but if it is an informal examination, it can be attended at any point of time. The next is develops higher order and digital literacy skills. So friends, when they make use of technology, of course their digital skills will be enhanced. So by using ICT for assessment, that can also be promoted. The next is access and equality. This can be distributed to any pupil, so there is absolutely no problem of access. So when the students have access to such kind of digital devices, then why can't we make use of ICT for assessment? There are of course issues like digital divide, but many of the students have now access to technologies. Now it caters to multiple audiences. Of course, as I said in the beginning, this can be used for individualized testing, and each individual is different from the other. So there can have different kinds of assessment, tests for different kinds of people and different audiences. So friends, I would just sum up that there are various what we call advantages, and there are various facilities of using ICT for assessment, and that's why ICTs are important. Now let us come to the next point, which is relating to the technology or ICT use in the assessment. If you talk about the assessment, where actually assessment takes place? If I am a teacher, at what all points I would assess my learners? There are three major points. One, at the beginning of the teaching learning process, then one during the teaching learning process, and what at the end of the teaching learning process. There is also a category like the students themselves assess their progress of learning. So friends, with that we can have three modes of assessment, three types of assessment. One is the assessment of learning, the second one is assessment for learning, and the third is assessment as learning. We also have a kind of a terminology like formative assessment and summative assessment. We will see what does these assessment represents. The first one is assessment of learning. Assessment of learning is nothing but, as I said, there are three major points, one in the beginning, one during the teaching learning process, and one at the end of the teaching learning process. So if you are conducting the assessment at the end of the teaching learning process, it can be maybe at the end of a classroom lecture, maybe at the end of a period, maybe after completing a complete unit or couple of units, or the term-end examination that we conduct. All those can be considered as assessment of learning. So that's why we call it as this is a form of summative assessment or summative evaluation. When assessment is conducted at the end of the teaching learning process, such an assessment is called assessment of learning. Now the second one is assessment for learning. As I said, assessment can also happen when I am teaching or during the teaching learning process. Say for example, if I am teaching for a 40 or 45 minutes time or 1 hour duration, after teaching 10 minutes, I will be checking whether my students are following what I am teaching in the classroom. Again, I will be testing their knowledge or level of understanding maybe after 30-35 minutes. So if I do such kind of assessment during the teaching learning process, such assessment is called assessment for learning. So such assessment type is also called as formative assessment. So basically assessment for learning is nothing but their formative assessment. So friends, assessment of learning, that is summative assessment, which is done at the completion of teaching learning process. Then assessment for learning, that is done during the teaching learning process. This is also called formative assessment. Now the third category is assessment as learning. See, it's not only the teacher who can take the assessment, even the students also have, or they also must be given a facility or chance to assess their own learning. So when the students assess their own progress, such an assessment is called assessment as learning. So that's why we have written when learners personally involved to monitor his or learning. So they themselves, the students or learners themselves check their own learning. And this can be done in various ways, and there are various technologies which support such assessment practices, the assessment as learning. Now friends, when we talk about the assessment, we also should mention about the evaluation, which is nothing but evaluation is something which goes beyond the assessment, just to judge the quality of something. This is in brief we can say evaluation. Say for example, at the end of the what we say 10th class examination, we will judge the students whether they can be promoted to higher education or not. This is done at various levels of teaching learning process or education. Or we will evaluate whether any student is capable to do a particular task. So evaluation is basically for judging the quality of something. In the teaching learning process, the quality of learners or students. So friends, evaluation is also categorized into different types. One is the diagnostic evaluation, which is done in the beginning of the teaching session. Before I take up or before I teach a particular session, I will check whether the students have some understanding about any concept, or I will just check what is their level of understanding. Such evaluation is diagnostic evaluation. Then the formative evaluation, it is done during the teaching learning process. It is almost similar to what we say the formative assessment, but here we are preferring evaluation. We are focusing more on evaluation. So that's why we call it like to identify the learning performance. Now summative evaluation, which is for value judgment, which is very common. Say for example, the judgment after completing 10th class or after completing any bachelor's or master's degree program. So if such kind of evaluation is performed, such evaluation is called summative evaluation. So friends, the assessment, different types of assessment, then the evaluation and different types of evaluation. I hope you have understood the concept that we have discussed. Now let us shift to ICT in assessment. What will be the role of teachers? Couple of points like decide the topic, content to be assessed, as a teacher, if you are making use of ICT or technology for assessment, your first and foremost task would be you should identify the topic to be assessed. Then identify the suitable technologies. As I said, there are various technologies. Which technology will be suitable for checking or assessing a particular topic? Then preparation of relevant tools and techniques. Then placement of the questions to be included in the assessment. So if you are making use of any technology, anyhow you have to prepare the questions, and that would be placed in different places in the software. Say for example, you have a questionnaire which is having multiple choice and essay type questions. So in the software there will be places for placing the multiple choice questions. So you have to place that questions there. Essay type questions at separate point or separate place. Once that is done, you have to review the question, whether it is properly formatted, whether it is properly written, that is reviewing. Then you can have a tryout of this questionnaire just to identify if there is any mistake or if it is working properly. Finally, once it is done, if everything works properly, this can be given to your students. So as a teacher, this is your role if you are making use of some technology for assessment. Now let us see the different ICTs or technologies for online assessment. As you see in the slide, see there are various technologies, computer in different ways. So we have computer assisted assessment or computer adaptive testing. In computer adaptive testing, the questions will be channelized, the questions will be modified as per the response of the student. As I said, if I am giving a wrong response to any question, the computer will make the next question little bit easy, which would help me to answer the question which I was marking as wrong. So that is possible in computer adaptive testing. Then mobile, we can use mobile devices. Assessment is an integral part of what we say all the learning management system. We can place digital teaching learning resources. Then there is a place facility for conducting the assessment also. So friends, LMS based assessment is also possible. Then another software or technology is the digital concept map. Usually concept map is drawn in the papers, but there are many softwares which would help us to make diagrams, which would help us to identify the relationship between different concepts. Say for example, I am teaching a unit. I would ask my students to develop a concept map connecting all the concepts which I have taught in that particular unit. This can be done easily with the software. So concept map can also be used for assessment. Then online forum. In almost all the online courses, discussion forum is there. Students are directed, asked to respond or participate in the discussion forum. So their responses can also be evaluated. So online forum or discussion forum can also be used. Then different survey tools like Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, there are many such tools which can also be used for assessment. Then wikis, blogs, different online tools, quizzes, all these can be used for assessment. And for all those ICTs, there are application softwares which would help us to complete the assessment. So friends, this is in brief about the different ICTs which can be used for online assessment. It's not only online assessment, ICTs can be, technologies can also be used for offline assessment. Say for example, I can make a questionnaire in the PowerPoint presentation. This can be given to my students, which is not requiring any internet services. So assessment can be used both online and offline. We will be discussing many of such technologies in the coming lectures. So friends, in brief, these are some of the ICTs which can be used for online assessment. Now, as I said, there are a couple of points or assessment is done or practiced in the beginning, during the teaching learning process, or at the end of the teaching learning process. Even we are giving the teachers can give chances for students to assess their own progress of learning. That's what the self and peer assessment. So how it is done? Let me make it very simple. Like if I am a student, I'll write an essay. This will be given to my, what we say, peer, my friend. He will read the essay. He will allot me marks or grade. So that is what the peer assessment. Even I can evaluate my essay based on some points if it is there. So when students conduct their own assessment, that is called self and peer assessment. Some of the major technologies like e-portfolio, e-rubrics, e-records. These technologies can be used for self and peer assessment. E-portfolio is very common nowadays because teachers give number of activities, assignments to the students. They submit the digital proof for that. Earlier it was like they will be writing in the paper and that will be collected back. But now many of the activities, assignments are completed electronically. So in e-portfolio, the digital works of the students will be collected and that can be used for assessment. So e-portfolio is one such ICT for self and peer assessment. Even teachers can also make use of e-portfolio. E-rubrics, there will be some set guidelines or points based on which the assessment will be done. Say for example, if I am giving an activity like preparing a video program, so I'll be giving points if they have done the introduction properly, the content which is included, if they have given a proper conclusion, then the digital like what we say components used, digital resources used like images, then graphics, any website link. So if they have included all those in their video program, then I will be giving marks or as awards. I will be giving marks or grades based on if they have included all these. So e-rubrics will have some kind of a what we say fixed areas, and for each area there will be some marks assigned. So if assessment is conducted based on that areas and the marks assigned, such an ICT or technology is the e-rubrics. So friends, that can also be used for self and peer assessment. Then various e-records like anecdotal record, checklist, etc. So friends, these are some of the ICTs or technologies which can be used for self and peer assessment. It's not only limited to self and peer assessment, even the teachers can also make use of all these technologies. And the next ICT is regarding the collaborative learning, which is very common in the online program. Say for example, the program right now you are attending. You are asked to respond to the questions which are posted in the discussion forum. In many online programs, the responses in the discussion forum are counted for what we say assessing their progress, assessing the students or learners' progress. So discussion forum is one such technology used for collaborative learning. Blog is another. The teachers can create their own blog. Students can be directed to post their comments or responses in the blog, and their responses can be used for assessment or evaluation. Similarly, the comments or responses posted in the discussion forum can also be used for assessing the progress of the learning of learners. So friends, these are some of the technologies or ICTs for assessment of collaborative learning. Even as I said, in the case of self and peer assessment, these technologies can also be used by the teachers for assessing the progress of the learning of learners. So friends, with this, we will wind up this video lecture. In this video lecture, we have talked about the different types of assessment, evaluation, and some of the ICTs used for online evaluation, offline evaluation, online assessment, offline assessment, and some of the ICTs for self, peer, and collaborative learning. I hope you have understood the concepts and technologies that we have discussed today. In the coming video lectures, we will be taking some of the technologies and we will be demonstrating how such technologies can be used for preparing assessment questions. I hope you have understood the concepts. Thank you.